The following program is produced at and funded by Linden State College, the College of the Northeast Kingdom.
Coming up tonight on a special edition of News 7.
It's Election Day. We've got coverage from both party headquarters with coverage on all statewide and local races.
Republican Scott Milne is looking to upset incumbent Peter Shumlin in the governor's race.
Polls opened early this morning, but some towns saw a low turnout.
Gotta vote. Doesn't matter who you vote for, you got to vote.
Live from the Vermont Center for Community Journalism, this is News 7 at 5:30.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's election edition of News 7. It's election day across the country, and here in Vermont and around the Northeast Kingdom, there are several key races being decided.
We have team coverage from Burlington to right back here in our corner of the state. We start tonight over in the state capitol, where state Democrats and Republicans are preparing to gather and watch returns. News 7's Taylor Young joins us live now with a look at what Governor Peter Shumlin has been up to as he looks for a third term. Taylor?
Thanks, Camille. That's right. I am standing here inside the Hilton Hotel where members of the Democratic Party will wait for tonight's results. Now, no one from the party is here right now, but this is where they do expect their chief executive officer to arrive at 8 p.m. Governor Peter Shumlin is running for a third consecutive term. The 58-year-old from Putney has served as Vermont governor for the past 4 years and is looking to be re-elected for another 2. Shumlin says if elected, he plans on creating more jobs, raising household income, and controlling health care costs. A recent campaign finance report indicates that Shumlin has received just under $1 million worth of contributions and has spent just under $900,000. Shumlin has said his relief efforts following Tropical Storm Irene are amongst his most notable accomplishments. Now, Shumlin is feeling confident about this year's race against Republican opponent Scott Milne. Reporting live in Burlington, I'm Taylor Young. Back to you guys.
The Republican challenger for governor is Scott Milne. While Shumlin spent roughly $890,000 on his campaign, Milne spent just about a fourth of that, with his expenditures totaling just over $238,000. If elected, Milne intends to revitalize the economy on the foundation of an educated community and well-trained workforce. The full list for governor totals 7 candidates: Dan Feliciano of the Libertarian Party, Republican Scott Milne, and incumbent Democrat Peter Shumlin. Independent candidate Peter Diamondstone and independents Chris Erickson, who is also running for Congress, Bernard Peters, and Emily Payton.
Running for the U.S. House of Representatives for Vermont's congressional district is incumbent Democrat Peter Welch, who is seeking a 5th term. So now let's turn things over to News 7's Nick Oresco, who is also live in Burlington, where the state's Democrats are gathering.
Thanks, Cortland. That's right. Peter Shumlin has served since 2007, and Congressman Peter Welch looks to stay in office once again. Welch is running for re-election for a 5th term and is hoping to have as much success this year as he did back in 2012, where he defeated his opponents by 72% of the vote. Now, Welch ran unopposed in the Democratic Party. Some of Welch's biggest issues on the table include extending subsidized federal student loan rates until 2015. He also sponsors no federal enforcement against legal state marijuana. During his campaign, he has raised just over $1.1 million. Of that amount, just over $16,000 has been spent. Now, Welch is expected to arrive here at the hotel later, as many other candidates are, to await the votes. Live in Burlington, I am Nick Oresco. Guys, I'll send it on back to you.
Thank you, Nick. And for the full ballot for the congressional seat consists of 6 candidates. Matthew Andrews of the Liberty Union Party hopes to give a voice to the voiceless. Republican Mark Donka wants to decrease fuel costs and improve unemployment rates. Independent Chris Erickson has run for governor 4 times and is now taking a shot at the U.S. representative position. Independent Randall Meyer, as well as energy independent candidate Jerry Trudell, are also running against Welch.
The state's Republicans are also gathering in Burlington tonight. The man who holds the top Republican post in the state is Lieutenant Governor Phil Scott, and he is searching for his 3rd term in office. There are 3 candidates total on that ticket. Dean Corrin is representing the Progressive Party and supports Vermont Health Connect. Marina Brown is in the running as well, representing the Liberty Union Party. Both Corrin and Brown are looking to defeat Scott. Those Republicans and their supporters are starting to gather in Burlington at the Sheraton Hotel to watch the 2014 election results come in. That is where we find News 7's Cassandra Bernier, who has more now on Scott's bid for re-election and what he hopes to accomplish if he successfully is granted another term in office. Cassandra?
Thanks, guys. That's right. I'm here in Burlington for the Republicans' first time not being in Montpelier on election night. Lieutenant Governor Phil Scott, along with other Republicans, will be here at the Sheraton awaiting election results. The Lieutenant Governor was first elected in 2010 after serving 9 years on the Vermont State Senate. He is looking for his second re-election tonight. Scott is running against Libertarian Union candidate Marina Brown and Dean Corrin for the Vermont Progressive Party. And yesterday, Phil Scott spent the day traveling around Vermont, visiting all 14 counties. This was part of his 14-county Get Out the Vote tour. Scott believes that the legislature's top priority needs to be growing Vermont's economy and making families more secure. In the past 3 years, 8,500 people have dropped out of Vermont's workforce. The Lieutenant Governor says that the work needs to be done to contain rising healthcare costs and property taxes. Scott believes that the bills that go through legislature need to be viewed as ways that will help or hurt Vermont's economy. And the candidates are expected to come back here between 7 and 8 o'clock tonight at the Sheraton. Reporting live from Burlington, I'm Cassandra Bernier. Back to you guys in the studio.
State Treasurer is another statewide race being decided today. Democrat Beth Pierce is looking to be re-elected. Murray Gama of the Liberty Union Party is on the ballot, along with progressive candidate Don Schramm.
There are 3 candidates running for Secretary of State for the state of Vermont. Incumbent Jim Condos represents the Democratic Party and has been serving as Secretary of State since 2011. Ben Eastwood from the Progressive Party is running in opposition of Condos. The third and final candidate is Mary Alice Herbert from the Liberty Union Party.
Doug Hoffer is running unopposed for his position as State Auditor for the state of Vermont. This will be Doug Hoffer's second consecutive term in office. Hoffer has been focused on keeping his promises such as more transparency and more accountability. He is also focusing on using the results of his office's audits to better use taxpayers' money. And Attorney General Bill Sorrell is looking to be re-elected once again. The Burlington native is spending the night at the Democratic headquarters where he hopes to celebrate a victory. Sorrell faces Liberty Union Party candidate Rosemary Jakowski and Republican Shane McCormick.
It's the voters that really have all the say today, and around the Northeast Kingdom, residents came out to have their voices heard. We start in St. Johnsbury, where voting got underway this morning, and News 7's Dylan Robichaud was there.
Thank you for voting.
One by one, voters turned out to get their voices heard. In St. Johnsbury, voting got underway at the Father Lively Center starting at 10 a.m.
I almost didn't vote because I've been so discouraged at the national level with both parties, but I figured not voting is a vote.
Gun control issue has certainly brought out a lot of people, and the local issues on school compensation through UVM.
It wasn't just the voters that were out today. Candidates used the final hours to push for votes.
Well, I believe that we really need to have a common sense and reasoned approach in Montpelier. A lot of the problems that we have now is a lack of balance, and I will be able to bring a different perspective, so that way it's not going to be just a continued tax and spend policy that really Vermont can't afford anymore.
It's hard to imagine things getting much worse than they were, with the rate of the cost of healthcare going up just incrementally every year, exponentially, I should say, every year. I mean, my family was uninsured for 3 years, so I know what the kind of choices that people have to make.
Faye and Will Hoyt are facing Bob South and Scott Beck for the state rep for St. Johnsbury.
Right on there?
Yep, you can see I voted. I got a right to complain.
For some, just being part of the process is enough to get them to cast their ballot. And seeing their community come out to vote makes a difference.
And I was very pleased when I came into the parking lot and I saw how many cars were there, and that it looks like there's a lot of people coming out to vote, and I'm happy for that.
Once all the ballots are casted, the counting begins. Reporting for the Vermont Center for Community Journalism, I'm Dylan Robichaud in St. Johnsbury.
In Linden, voting opened at 8 a.m. and a steady stream of residents poured through the municipal building. News 7's Rob Krupe has more on what voters had to say.
It's your civic duty. I've been doing this since I was 18.
Each election season, many local voters pay a visit to the voting booths. And this morning in Lindenville, voting for election 2014 got off to a busy start at 8 a.m.
See, I'm so used to voting every year that it's just part of, when they say it's time to vote, I vote. And I think a lot of people don't do that, younger ones.
Some shared that opinion, saying that it's important for the younger generation to have their voices heard.
Definitely. We do not have enough of the younger generation getting into their civic duties, and they should. Because, as the saying goes, don't be E if you don't vote.
But what really controls everything is probably more money. Money controls it. But you have the fantasy to come here and say, my vote counts.
No matter what the outcome may be, your vote cannot count until you cast your ballot. Reporting for the Vermont Center for Community Journalism, Rob Krupe in Lyndonville.
Polls in most towns, including Linden and St. Johnsbury, are open tonight until 7 p.m. And now Jacqueline Laviolette joins us with our first look at our forecast. Jacqueline, for those voters who have yet to cast a vote on their ballot, what kind of weather can they expect as they make their way to the polls?
Well, Cortland, luckily the rain showers are going to hold off until later on this evening, so they should be in store for some drier conditions here as you end these ballots. And luckily, it is staying relatively on the warm side, too. Temperature really isn't going to drop a whole lot from now till the end of voting time. Right now, current temperatures across the region, up in the Northeast Kingdom, we're sitting in the mid-40s, and that's about normal for this time of year. Some warmer weather off to our west, and we have had a little bit of a warm-up here between yesterday and into today compared to all the cold temperatures that we saw this weekend when we were below normal. You can see some of the clouds as they built in across the afternoon. These clouds are going to stay with us here in the overnight hours as some of these rain showers off to our west start to work their way eastward, and that's what we're going to be in store for here as you head through the overnight hours. But luckily, most of the voters should stay dry. For tonight, though, those overnight showers are going to continue and will be low, only in 40 to 45 degrees tonight, so relatively warm out there. For tomorrow, too, definitely the pick of the week. Highs in the mid-50s and mostly cloudy skies, chance of the sun in the afternoon. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And after the break, we'll be breaking down some of the local races.
With 2 open seats for state senator, one business owner plans to make a splash by making Vermont use local resources.
And with a handful of unopposed candidates up for re-election, most of them already know their role.
The following program is produced at and funded by Linden State College, the college of the Northeast Kingdom.
Coming up tonight on News 7.
We've got more results from yesterday's election.
In St. Johnsbury, the Republicans are starting to take over.
And the race for Vermont governor ended up a lot closer than some people expected.
Live from the Vermont Center for Community Journalism, this is News 7 at 5:30.
The race for governor of Vermont was a lot closer than most expected. Good evening, I'm Cortland Hanley.
And I'm Camille DeLongis. That's right. As final votes were tallied today, Governor Peter Shumlin maintained a narrow lead over Republican opponent Scott Milne. The race was too close to call and will be settled by the legislature. News 7's Taylor Young was in Burlington last night with Vermont Democrats and has all the details.
The governor stayed away from the Democratic gathering for 4 hours after the polls were closed because a clear margin of victory never appeared.
We all know that tonight is a close election. We knew it was going to be a close election going in, and we were right.
As Shumlin spoke, travel agent Scott Milne, a Republican who has never ran for office before, was just 2,500 votes behind the 2-term governor.
Feeling good, we got some great momentum over the last couple of weeks particularly, and I think it's going to be a close night, and we're optimistic.
Shumlin spent nearly $1 million on his campaign, 4 times as much as Milne.
As a Vermonter, I am so proud to be here standing with you tonight, knowing that we've got more work to do, with numbers that are looking good, and with better news tomorrow.
I feel good that I've stuck to a plan. We haven't said things that we didn't believe to try to sway people.
Because neither candidate has received more than 50% of the vote, The legislature must officially decide in January who will be the next governor of Vermont. Reporting for the Vermont Center for Community Journalism, I'm Taylor Young in Burlington.
Shumlin has declared a press conference in Burlington this evening to announce victory as Vermont state governor. Milne has not conceded and both candidates remain shy of 50%. Shumlin received 2,090 votes more than Milne, putting him on top by 1%. The legislature who still make the final decision on who will become Vermont state governor in January. And although Milne fell 1% short statewide, he received the majority of the votes here in the Northeast Kingdom.
The race for Congress was definitely not as close as the governor's race, as Peter Welch won by more than 63,000 votes against his closest opponent, Republican Mark Donka. News 7's Nick Oresco has more on last night's congressional race.
I am going to have an opportunity to serve Vermont for another 2 years in Congress.
Peter Welch has once again beat out Mark Donka in the U.S. House District for Congress. In all, Welch received 64% of the total votes and thinks that this country is finally headed in the right direction.
I mean, look, we got challenges, but this is not the Great Depression. This is not the Civil War. This is not World War II. And why should any of us be complaining because things are challenging?
Challenging indeed. But Welch wants to see Congress address the problems in this country. He knows that they are difficult but thinks they are solvable. He wants to see the people of Vermont start working together.
In the Vermont approach, the Vermont ethic is that we find common ground so that we can make progress together.
And with Welch remaining in office for a 5th term, there are 2 major improvements that he wants to focus on.
Congressional dysfunction. In order to solve any issues, whether it's energy, long-term deficit, making health care more affordable, you've got to have a Congress that's willing to work together. But the second major challenge is trying to restore an economy that works for the middle class and for people who are willing to work really hard. They ought to have a shot at opportunity.
And even though the outcome is not what Mark Donka expected, he knows what the real issue was.
The biggest thing is money. You know, in order to run an effective campaign, you've got to have a certain amount of money. You've got to get name recognition. You've got to get face recognition. And the only way to do that is with money.
Reporting for the Vermont Center for Community Journalism, I'm Nick Oresco in Burlington.
Now back in the 2012 election race, Welch beat out his opponents by 72% of the votes cast. Whereas this year, Congressman Welch stole the show again with over 123,000 votes. While the Democrat received almost 65% of the votes, Donka received only 31.13% of the votes.
The Republican Party met at the Sheraton Hotel and Conference Center yesterday for the GOP reception. News 7's Cassandra Bernier was at the event.
Lieutenant Governor Phil Scott has beat out Democrat nominee Dean Corn for his second re-election.
When we are faced with something we must do in true utilitarian fashion, we roll up our sleeves and we just do it. We must do better. We can do better. We will do better. So tonight, let's celebrate our victories and support each other in defeats, because tomorrow we will all still have to go back to work, and we have a lot of work to do. Thank you very much.
The Republicans felt confident that Lieutenant Governor Phil Scott had won another term in office. 3 hours after the voting closed, they had kept the party going. Listening to the Republican wins in the House and Senate while watching Scott Milne's numbers climb closer to Peter Shumlin's.
And over at the Democratic headquarters, Dean Corn began his concession speech after only 60% of the votes were counted.
Of course, we're disappointed that we didn't prevail, but we ran a great race. We feel very good about that.
Scott believes that more people from Vermont's community should run for government positions.
We need the voices of real Vermonters in the legislature. We need the common man and woman, the people whose boots are literally on the ground every single day.
As the night came to a close, the Republican Party won some key spots in Vermont's government. Reporting for the Vermont Center for Community Journalism, I'm Cassandra Bernier in Burlington.
The night ended pretty early for Lieutenant Governor Scott's opponents. Progressive Democrat Dean Corn fell to Scott, only scoring 35.96% of the votes to Scott's 62.28%.
Chittenden Senate Representative Jim Condos has been re-elected as Secretary of State for another term. Condos has received just under 75% of the votes, beating his opponents Ben Eastwood and Mary Alice Herbert. For this upcoming term, Condos will focus on increasing the amount of voters statewide by creating a system of online voting registration.
We have to rise up and tell Congress no. We have to rise up and tell our friends in other states no, that we can't continue to see this voter suppression going on through voter ID laws and other things.
Condos was reelected with just over 126,000 votes, which translates to just under 75%. Runner-up Ben Eastwood of the Progressive Party earned just over 14%, while Mary Alice Herbert earned roughly 10% of the vote.
Vermont State Treasurer Beth Pierce of Barrie has been re-elected to another term as well. The incumbent ran against Liberty Union Party candidate Murray Goima, as well as Progressive Party candidate Don Schramm. Pierce, who took over the office from Jeb Spalding back in 2011, will be entering her third term in office. Since entering office, Pierce has been an advocate for protecting taxpayer dollars statewide.
So it's about economic prosperity for all of our citizens, and at the same time maintaining a good, strong bond rating that's like your credit rating at home, managing the state's finances, trying to stretch those tax dollars as far as we can.
The state treasurer earned her re-election by receiving nearly 75% of the votes. Pierce's biggest competition was Don Schramm of the Progressive Party, who was only able to earn about 17.38% of the votes.
The 25th Vermont Attorney General was named last night. This is William Sorrell's 17th year as Attorney General, and he is the longest-serving general in the history of Vermont. Going into this new term, there are a lot of priorities that he wants to take care of. Some of those on the list include a fight on the GMO labeling law and the suing of all big gasoline companies for allegedly polluting underground water. Though he has a lot on his plate, he says he is ready to go for another term in office.
Well, I'm just very gratified. I have a great job. I'm independent, chief law enforcement officer in the state, and this is a job that has an awful lot to do with the health of our environment and the health, safety, and well-being of Vermonters. And I appreciate the support, and I've got lots of energy to get right at it for another 2 years.
Sorrell was able to sneak one out against Republican Shane McCormick in order to earn another term. Sorrell earned just over 58% of the votes, while McCormick fell short, earning just under 38%.
Democratic State Auditor Doug Hoffer ran unopposed last night and won another term of office. Hoffer is very grateful for those who voted and knows his votes were down due to the fact that he ran unopposed. However, he knows that he has a lot of work ahead of him and will keep working hard for the state of Vermont.
I'm excited about another 2 years. I love the job. I've got a good crew. We've done some good work. There's a heck of a lot more to do, so I really am anxious to get back to work.
2012 elections, Hoffer beat his opponent by 17,000 votes.
Senators Sanders and Leahy were both on hand at the Democratic headquarters last night. The senators shared their support for their fellow candidates and their hopes for the future. Leahy stood firmly behind Peter Welch, assuring the room for his future success in Congress. Sanders spoke passionately on his plans for Vermont.
Washington is not going to do what needs to be done, then it's going to have to be done at the statewide level. And in my view, there is no state in the country better positioned to move this country in a different direction than the small state of Vermont.
Sanders hopes the state can inspire the rest of the country by lowering the poverty rate and executing a successful universal health care plan. And voting at Wheelock's Town Hall closed at 7 o'clock last night, and that's when the ballot counting began. The town had a high voter turnout as 222 voters made their way to the polls. The amount of votes was greater than expected, with the number in the past years barely breaking 200. Small towns around Vermont had trouble in the past bringing in voters, but this election season lured in a large crowd.
And the number's hovering right now around 185 with 35 minutes left to vote, so we might break 200. And we don't usually break 200.
The results from Wheelock show that voters did not favor either party.
A busy day yesterday at the town office in Sheffield with voters casting ballots all day long. 182 voters made their way to the polls, which had a higher turnout than in most recent elections. Sheffield Town Clerk William St. Peter stressed just how important it is for members of the community to cast their votes.
Well, I think the most important part about voting is basically that people should exercise their right to vote. It's the primary way that they can make their interests, their feelings, their opinions known. People can communicate with the legislators or whatever, but voting is the true representation in my.
And now AJ Waterman joins us. First look at our forecast. AJ, it was a beautiful day outside. Is this nice weather going to stick around?
Well, it was definitely beautiful out there. We had temperatures today in the mid to upper 50s, rather warm, just about 10 degrees above average, but unfortunately it looks like the cold air is going to arrive and it's here to stay. So tonight, our current temperatures, we're seeing temperatures in the mid to upper 40s, still mild. We're going to hang on to that mild air for the day tomorrow, but after that, it's going to cool down rather quickly. You can see the warmth still hanging on to southern New England as well. Temperatures right around 60 degrees. But on satellite and radar, that frontal system that moved through, that's indicative of some cold air that's going to be working in for the night tonight and over the next several days as that cold air streams in from the north to the south. Weather headlines for the next couple of days. Mild tomorrow. We're going to see temperatures continue into the upper 40s with mostly cloudy skies. But as we head into the day on Friday, this is a coastal storm that we're going to have to keep a close eye on because it's going to start as rain but potentially end as snow. And I'll have all the details on that coming up in just a couple minutes. And will we have a chilly weekend as well? High temperatures in the 30s possible, and that's going to be rather cold. Our first shot at winter, and I'll have more coming up in just a few minutes.
Thank you, AJ.
We've got some local results coming up for you in just a bit.
And then we'll hop over to the Granite State to bring you the latest results from New Hampshire's elections.
The following program is produced at and funded by Linden State College, the college of the Northeast Kingdom.
Coming up tonight on News 7.
A water main issue still causing road closures in St. Johnsbury.
Tonight wraps up the final day of the Kiwanis auction. We've got a story you can feast your eyes on.
Find out what local organization has been helping the community for 13 years now. News 7 starts right now.
Live from the Vermont Center for Community Journalism, this is News 7 at 5:30.
A water main break has closed Federal Street in St. Johnsbury. Good evening. I'm Kelly O'Brien.
And I'm Kevin Kelleher. The St. Johnsbury Department of Public Works, as well as C&C Bunnell Excavating, is working to repair the water main. In order to make these repairs, the department needs to install a valve near the intersection of Federal and Pearl Street. The road will be closed until Friday afternoon. Motorists are encouraged to seek alternative routes around this area until the problem is fixed. The town of St. Johnsbury is also asking residents to keep their faucets dripping to prevent pipes from freezing.
And also this time of year where the frost is coming out of the ground, keep your water services open or just let a little bit of water flowing so that your water service doesn't freeze up. I think that's about the best. That's what the town's been asking to do, and make sure everybody does that so you don't have frozen water lines.
This is not currently affecting any local businesses or homes near the area.
The Vermont legislature has decided to drop a bill that would have prohibited fishing and swimming in bodies of water that serve as municipal water sources. Bill H-33 was proposed to authorize municipalities to regulate their surface water use of public waters used to be as drinking water supplies. The bill has been opposed by state environmental protection and fish and wildlife groups. Although the bill seems to have been cut, there is a chance to amend it later on.
The St. Johnsbury Planning Commission met to discuss updates and the renewal of the designated downtown. The designated downtown committee is a group in charge of keeping that area of St. Johnsbury running smoothly. Every 5 years, their contract is up for reconsideration. Over the last 5 years, they oversaw reconstruction and expansion of several businesses and created a significant number of jobs. Chair Susan Cherry and the rest of the board reviewed the responsibilities of the committee at their meeting last night.
The town should actively promote, assist, and encourage business, building owners, and town staff to take advantage of financial and other benefits available to businesses and residents who own property in designated downtown district.
After review, the board unanimously approved the renewal of the designated downtown program for another 5 years.
Today, the Senate discussed an act that would revise the open meeting law. The bill proposes to allow the public to attend all meetings of public agencies. Additionally, the government would be required to provide an electronic copy of all the minutes for publics to remain informed. The legislation will also allow members of the public body to participate in the meeting electronically. Further discussions in the Senate is expected.
Changes may be coming to town meeting day procedures. The Vermont State Senate is considering a bill that would allow a town's legislative body to appoint a town clerk or treasurer. Currently, the town clerks are elected by the voters of a town, rather than a legislative body such as a select board.
Police are investigating a report of stolen gas at the Wheelock store. According to state police, the incident occurred at about 12 this morning when a gray-colored sedan drove off without paying. The sedan was last seen traveling north on Route 122 toward Sheffield. Anyone with information is asked to call the Vermont State Police at 802-748-3111.
All St. Johnsbury police officers, as well as the Sheriff's Department, wear body cameras, and Burlington is currently working on an expansion project which will distribute body cameras to all of their officers. That was the sound of a Dallas officer shooting Jason Harrison. Harrison's family introduced the video as evidence in its wrongful death lawsuit against the police department. The family says Harrison was bipolar and needed mental health support when officers showed up at his house. You can hear the gunshots go off. Police say Harrison lunged at an officer with a screwdriver.
For someone to just go from 0 to 100, the way these guys did it, didn't put forth the effort to de-escalate anything, is it's rough, and I just don't want to believe that that's it's going to be acceptable here in Dallas, Texas.
The St. Johnsbury Police Department has been using body cameras for years. Caledonia County Sheriff Dean Shatney says the officer, the department, and the public are all on the same page. Shatney says if there is ever an issue, they can go to the video and sort it out accordingly.
I think police department should try to be as kind of like a window, you know, as transparent as possible. And with this tool, it helps us to become more transparent to the public.
Lawmakers in the Granite State are still debating on whether or not to require body cameras. Back in February, David Hiltz of the Department of Safety said, quote, "It's premature to move to implement this at a time when we're focusing on the benefits but haven't adequately focused on all of the ramifications."
The Vermont Health Connect was launched in October and has yet to reveal major progress. The health insurance project has costed over $200 million for the state and experienced failure since the beginning. Some areas of concern are determining eligibility, budget management, time, and how Vermont Health Connect prices compare to competitors. Auditor Doug Hoffer has announced a meeting this spring to discuss what is next for the program. Hoffer believes, quote, "This is an ongoing project of immense size and complexity," unquote. He also believes the state has to learn from this. The date for the audit meeting has yet to be announced.
Makers of active outdoor products, the Tender Corporation, received final approval to expand its facility in Littleton. The expansion is part of Tender's 5-year plan, which projects a 50% increase in sales and the addition of 20 to 30 jobs. Tender had planned to move their operations out of Littleton if they did not get approval for the expansion. The approval will keep 160 jobs in Littleton.
The Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Foods, and Markets announced grant funds to support specialty crops in the state. $200,000 is the approximate total for grants in 2015. The Agency of Agriculture, Food, and Markets encourages projects proposed innovative partnerships that will help specialty crop producers' operations. Some of their goals in the year include informing farmers of economic impact across Vermont's working landscape, environmental stewardships, as well as farm visibility and profitability. Applicants for these grants must submit a letter of intent by April 3rd. And today, Bernie Sanders criticized a bill that would take away the state's power to protect consumers on hazardous chemicals. Sanders says there's a new legislation that would undercut future state regulations and that the hands of the states who have been most active on the issue of chemical protection.
The real issue is, given the fact that we have tens of thousands of chemicals, of which Many of them we know very little about. We don't know how they interact with each other. We don't know how they impact vulnerable populations like kids or people who have ill. It seems to me that we have the obligation to pass legislation which, in fact, protects the people of this country, especially our children.
The kid-friendly food franchise Kraft recently announced a recall of their macaroni and cheese products. This voluntary recall includes just around 6.5 million boxes, which could have contained small pieces of metal in the packaging. Boxes that qualify for recall include a use-by date of September 18th. And Kraft says if you return a box that qualifies for the recall, your money will be refunded. Well, the third and final day of the 65th annual Kiwanis auction is upon us. This is the final night of the auction to raise money to help benefit the swimming pool in St. Johnsbury. That's where we find News 7's Nick Oresco, who is at the Father Lively Center in St. Johnsbury, to tell us more. Nick?
Good evening, Kevin. Now, so far, they have not reached their ultimate goal of $30,000, but it is still early. Now, one thing that you may not have thought of during the auction is the food that's being served for all of the volunteers. And that's right, the food. I took a closer look at why the food is so important during this auction.
Well, yesterday, that's all I did, was cook in the kitchen.
That's Denise Stewart, one of the volunteer cooks for the Kiwanis auction. She plays a huge role when it comes to putting the food on the tables. And if you've ever been a volunteer at the auction, you have seen that table line of food.
So you just plan a menu, and you know, we're having meatball subs tonight and pasta salad.
Now, on average, Denise prepares food for about 30 people. However, year after year, there are less and less volunteers, meaning that less food needs to be made.
We used to have so many people that it was more of a job, but now we have fewer people because it doesn't take as many people to run the auction.
We've only got 1 minute left. But why is it so important to prepare food for these volunteers?
Because they're here at dinner time, for one. I mean, we can't expect them to come and work for and with us without feeding them. It keeps our energy up, and food is a really good place for people to network and talk, and food's a medium for communication.
And communication is key when you need to work with the public, especially when it's for a good cause like raising money for the Kiwanis swimming pool. And well, it helps when you have a cook who knows what people like to eat.
And so she, like the pulled pork, that's a, and then the meatballs from last night. I mean, she knows what people like, so she makes sure that that's in the food plan.
And as I speak right now, they are currently serving the food for the auction that will begin in less than 30 minutes. Live from St. Johnsbury, I'm Nick Oresco. Let's send it back to Kevin in the studio.
Thanks for that, Nick. And now AJ Waterman joins us with a first look at our forecast. AJ, I found myself just running out to my car both last night and this morning. Is this something that's going to be continued?
Well, yeah, it's been very cold last 24 hours. It's going to be cold over the next few days, but a bright side, spring is just around the corner. This Friday is the first start of spring. Although we won't be warm for spring, on average, April is about 56 degrees and May about 67. So certainly warmer air is on the way, even though for the start of spring, it's not going to feel all that warm. Wind gusts outside today, we're very blustery outside. You can see winds around 32 miles per hour in Lyndonville, about 58 over on Mount Washington. So wind gusts were impressive today, and current temperatures showing that we were in the teens as well. So winds and cold temperatures make way for a very, very cold day, and we were real cold today. And weather headlines over the next couple of days. Tomorrow we're going to be cold. High temperatures be only in the low to mid-20s, but warmer on Friday with winds flipping around to the south, and we'll be seeing some clouds come in later on the day. Friday, all out ahead of our next storm system, Friday into Saturday with some snow possible, and of all the details coming up in just a bit.
Thanks, AJ. And coming up, we've got the latest on a ban of teacher strikes across the state.
And sticking with education, Kelly, Linden State College has made some layoffs. But what's the reasoning behind it?